In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to be brave and kind when you are dealing with conflict. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name's Belle. I'm a best-selling author, a transformation coach, and a speaker. And on my channel, I'm covering ways that you can step up, speak up, and stand up in business and in life. So today, when we're talking about how to be brave and deal with conflict, I want to give you two real life examples and watch for the end of the video where you can actually vote on next week's topic to be created. So I'd love you to stick around and share what you would like to hear about next, whether it's a business transformation or a personal transformation. So let's dive in. Now, conflict is something that sometimes can get a bit of a bad rap, but it can actually be healthy. So in this video, I want to talk with you around why it happens, where it happens, and what to do about it. Okay, so let's talk about why conflict happens. Now, it tends to be in how we are defining our core values. So our core values can be things like health, loyalty, relationships, community, love, justice, harmony, safety. And even though we can have that shared value as human beings or as a community or even within our companies that we work for, how we actually live and breathe that value can be different from person to person. So our conflict kicks in when our conscious or unconscious biases in how we see the world are triggered and kick into play. And you may even notice as I go through this video, you may be triggered on certain things. So please be mindful if that happens and really listen out for the strategies on what you can do to manage it when you feel yourself being triggered or when you're observing it in others. Now, when we get triggered, we can make a choice that's conscious or unconscious in terms of to respond, to not respond, or to take a break and reconvene at a later date when we are in a position to manage our emotions better. So, where conflict happens. Conflict can actually happen internally when we're having our own values conflict, and I'm about to give you an example of this from one of my clients. And it can also happen externally with people that we are in a relationship with, whether it's at work, at home, in our friend groups, even on social media. So they're the two ways that conflict can happen, internally and externally. And it can be constructive and it can be destructive. So whenever you're choosing or not choosing to engage, work out whether what you are doing is kind, truthful, and helpful. The first example, internal conflict. Now, one of my clients shared with me that they had an employee who is looking at their value of safety and health right now. And the reason that that's prevalent, and hopefully the algorithms will be kind when I'm talking about this, is it is related to vaccinations and where I live in Western Australia, the mandates that are being put out by governments. Now, personally, I am for freedom of choice and your right to choose. And I'm also very respectful of making sure that we are managing guidelines for people, but I do believe in your body and your choice. So with this particular employee, he had been very adamant that for him, the definition of the value of health, having a sound body, mind, and spirit, and his definition of loyalty, which is around maintaining his allegiance to an idea in this scenario, was to not get vaccinated. He wanted that to be honored. His other value that comes into play is around community. Now, for him, so the definition of community that I want to use is people who care about something and pursue it together. Now, how he would live his active definition of community is by going to the pub and socializing with his friends on a Sunday afternoon. I do community differently. You may do community differently as well. But for him, that's the value of community. So, what happens when these values of community and health and loyalty, his internal conflict comes into play, they actually start to vie for position in terms of which one will go first and how is the underlying value of freedom and freedom of choice being honoured. So this creates internal conflict for the employee. Does he hold tight to his position around vaccination and what it means for his life, or does he concede and actually prioritize community, because the importance of relationships and spending time with people he cares about is actually important to him. Now, in this particular scenario, because mandates were put in place where it said that you could not go to pubs if the pub had a capacity of X amount of people, and that was what was part of his routine, and that was part of his freedom in terms of in how he enjoyed life, he chose community as the overarching value. So that meant that he was prepared to concede on being loyal to his ideals because this was more important. That's an example of internal conflict. Now, internal conflict with our values can change depending on the situation that we're in and how we are weighing things up in terms of our position and what we stand for and who we are. It's not to say that he doesn't care about loyalty or anything like that. It's just to say that in this instance, this value is taking priority over the other one. So, if this is something that you have observed before, feel free to drop a comment below. Maybe you have seen it in your friend groups. All you need to do to let me know is say, I've seen it, Belle, and I know that you are not alone. So, that's the first example, is internal, when we have this going on for ourselves. Now, externally, where conflict happens, and this may be something that is easier to observe as opposed to that internal self reflection, we can actually have the same core value as someone else. And in this example, I want to use the value of health and sorry, I've got health and safety. So when we're talking about health and safety, if you think about motivations for humans, we tend to have a need to look after our health and well-being in terms of having access to food, like supplies of food and water and sleep to keep us functioning. It's something that is required for our existence. Safety is more around how we're feeling safe within our homes, within our communities, within our organizations. And safety can be a real trigger for wanting to speak up or potentially choose to shut up and not say anything. So, making sure that people feel safe when you are entering into conflict can be important. So, what's happening for clients of mine is there is a lot of discussion around, once again, to vax or to not vax, and how that's actually playing out in terms of people holding their opinions and their ideals. Now, both groups have the value of health. Some of them are viewing holding up this definition of health as choosing to follow what is mandated. Some of them are following through with, I don't know what's in it and I'm choosing not to follow through. They're still trying to honour that overarching value of health. It's just their lived definition of it is different. Then what happens where conflict may start is justice is kicking in, the value of justice. So justice is defined as the behaviour that conforms to what is right, fair and reasonable. So when we're looking at that, if people feel as though an injustice or their value of justice is being triggered, and this may be the one that's overarching in terms of what's happening for people, they may feel inclined to speak up about things because they feel as though their definition of justice is not actually following through. So for some people, justice may be following the law. For some people, it may be saying that a law does not seem fair and right and unreasonable. Now, during conflict, a value, and it is a core value, but it's not necessarily one that gets prioritized, is the core value of love. So, love in this instance is defined as unselfish devotion that freely accepts another person. So, keep this in mind as we move into what's going to happen next. Now, remember, with core values, their lived definition can evolve over time. So, what you view as safety when you're a small child may be different to when you become an employee in the workplace and how you feel safe. So, creating that safe space for people to be brave and courageous and speak up without fear is really important. So keep that in mind as you're navigating conflict. Now, conflict is healthy as well. So it doesn't always have to be bad. Conflict can bring about change. It can bring about reform. It can actually improve things for people. And it's really important to know when is the right thing or like when is it right to speak up and when is it right to stay quiet, or when is it right to reconvene at a later time. So that brings me to talking about what to actually do about it if you find yourself either as an active participant, a passive participant, or even an observer in conflict. So I'm going to give you some steps to work through here. Number one, catch a breath and raise your awareness. Take some time to observe what core values may be at play here, and whether it's a definition that is different for two people, or if there's competition happening between your own internal values. And if you prioritize one, whereabouts is that cost going to play out? So, as an example, if harmony is a top value for some people. Now, harmony is unity in relationships, the absence of conflict and strife between associates. You may be more inclined to keep the peace and not say anything. It's understanding, though, whether that can cost something else that you may actually care about. The other value or core value that you may see at play for people who are choosing to be quiet about things is around emotional well-being. Now, emotional well-being in this instance is inner peace, abiding confidence, freedom from anxieties, and tranquility. So, some people may also choose to not speak up, or they may remove themselves from situations or social media because they're looking to protect their own emotional well-being in this particular instance. So, this is around how we catch our breath and raise awareness. The next step through this, once we've kind of gone, there's conflict happening, what's causing it, is to identify your role. So, are you choosing to be active or passive? And remember that you can choose to respond immediately. You can choose to press pause and find a time and place where emotions can be dealt with much better. Or you can choose to not respond at all, as we saw with the example of choosing harmony or choosing emotional well-being. Now, all responses are equally valid, and you may choose a different response. You may have a default to always want to respond. It's going to depend on the situation and how safe you feel with a person or with an organization in raising your response. So that's the second step, is to identify your role and really think about the role that you're playing, or think about the roles that you're observing. The third step is what to do if you're feeling triggered. So, if you're feeling brave, you can ask the person what's their intention. So, you can just say to you, I'm really curious with that statement, what's your intention? And I'd like to understand it a little bit more. So, this is around looking at understanding. So, understanding a different point of view does not mean you're accepting their point of view. This approach really is about helping you to be a good listener through this, and it can also help you avoid assumptions that may be firing off internally for you and how you can actually manage them. So, you may be inclined to think that because someone is taking a view on health for you and they're holding tight around their stance on things, that may be at the cost of relationships. So this is really around operating from that value of love and looking at how you can understand where they're coming from. Now, love doesn't mean being all gushy and romantic either. It can be more around the understanding of other human beings. So just keep that in mind in case you find yourself being triggered, going, I'm not all fluffy and I'm a badass. So really think about that as you go through here. Next step, number 4, is to repeat back to the person what you are hearing in their words. So it can be, so what I'm hearing from you is you feel this because of this. Okay. And that allows them to feel heard. And they may say yes. And then it's around thinking of, if you are okay with that, and thinking about how you're going to close this out or how you're going to manage it. And it can start off with something like this. So if you're really being conscious of the core values that are at play in here, and you do care about relationships with people and making sure, so it's not around trading on what you stand for, but it is around looking at how you're prioritizing the importance of relationships, people who are different to you. Think about step 5, which is around how you can be brave and come at it with a statement such as this: I value our relationship. So you're really owning, in this situation, relationships. I'm going to ask for us to park this topic for now because it feels to me as though emotions are starting to be the driver. Now, that gives you the chance to pause and reconvene and come back to it and choose an environment and a space where you can actually deal with this constructively. If you can't resolve conflict, if it feels as though things are being escalated and you really do value the relationship of the people that you are with, really consider bringing an impartial party to help you find a healthy path forward. Now, this can be for a work conflict, it can be for a relationship, it can be for anything, but really think about how you can actually help each other to improve the understanding of that position and find that step forward. So I'd love to know from you if this has been helpful in terms of what are one of those steps that kind of makes you go, aha, I never realized that my internal values. So feel free to share that. Now, as promised, if you would like more people to get help with this, make sure that you do a couple of things. The first thing is hit that like and subscribe button right down below here. And the next one, if you'd like to join in on me creating more content to help people step up, speak up, and stand up in business and in life. So now I'm going to ask you to vote for next week's video, and that is personal transformation, how to influence your life with thoughts and my story of going from this to this. Or would you like business transformation and how I became a top 20 best-selling author with zero marketing budget? So vote for number one, personal transformation, or number two, business transformation down below. And remember, down in the notes, there are some links to my program, Behaving Bravely, which can help you to navigate conversations even more if you like. And there's also a link to a Google form where you can pop in your question that you would like voted on and answered in upcoming videos. My name is Belle Lockerbie. I am here to cheer you on in business and in life and encourage you to be brave. I'll catch you in next week's video. Bye for now.